I realized that the human body is quite intriguing, and not just the human body, but the biology of things.
How are you able to understand all these different dynamics of the human machine?
That is what medical school teaches you.
Do we need to understand it from also the environment where you live in?
When a patient comes to you, even the physique of the patient, the appearance of the patient tells you something.
As a medical doctor, how do you really describe disease?
So when there's a dysfunction of any part of your body, then we are looking at disease.
What do you think about this idea of the compartmental?
You don't just take one part of the human being and then use it to generalize.
You are the Minister of Health in Ghana, and you do have a magic power, and you have 3 things to do to revolutionize the Ghanaian medical sector. What are these 3 things you will do? So first, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join me in this conversation. I believe we are going to have a lot to discuss today. Could you start by telling me a bit about yourself? Please go.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Obehi. I'm grateful for the opportunity as well. So I'm called Benedict Ajua Hayford. I'm a medical doctor. I'm currently pursuing my housemanship at the Eastern Regional Hospital, Koforidua in Ghana. And I'm also the president of a charity foundation or a non-profit called the RTC Foundation or the Rita Tia Chichi Foundation.
All right, that's lovely. So you are working as a medical doctor, but you're also having a charity foundation that you are helping people. So you are helping people in very many ways, correct?
Very correct, yeah.
All right. So Dr. Benedict, tell me this thing. So you were born exactly where? We are really fascinating about storytelling here. So we're going to be doing storytelling with you just now. So tell me a bit about where you grew up.
Oh, okay. So I'm a Ghanaian, and in Ghana, most people know Accra, but there's also Kumasi as well. So I was born in Kumasi, a particular place called Santase, and that's where I was born. And then I grew up in a place called Ahinima Kokobein. So I am a fully fledged Ghanaian, both parents. I grew up with 6 brothers. I have 6 biological brothers that I grew up with, and that was how life was, in at home and then in school. So I also schooled in Kumasi, went to basic school in Kumasi. Afterwards, I finished with by going to a high school in Kumasi as well called St. Louis Senior High School. After graduating from St. Louis Senior High School, I went to KNUST, University of Science and Technology, the medical school there. So that's where I had my medical education. And then after medical education, I was posted to Koforidua, where I currently pursue my housemanship. Currently, I'm doing internal medicine and then ops and gynecology. So that's it about my background.
Yeah, right. That's lovely. That's lovely. But this idea of becoming a medical doctor, where is, of course, in Africa, for most Africans, even here in the diaspora, when they have a child, one of the things that they usually will prescribe to the child is you either going to become a medical doctor, being a lawyer, engineer. Those 3 are really very popular. Any other thing, sometimes it becomes something that you need to debate now. If you tell your father you're going to be an artist, at least in those days, it wasn't something that was easily considered, no? But of course, now they can see the like of Burna Boys and all of them make a lot of money. So, okay, it can make sense now maybe. But usually in the thinking of the African mind, you are a medical doctor, an engineer, a lawyer. Okay, you are an educated person. You go to school. Otherwise, we need to know. We need to verify. So, how did you decide that you were going to be a medical doctor? Was there anything that actually influenced you taking that decision?
When people ask me this particular question, in my mind, I think they're looking for a very peculiar story or a very once in a million story. But my story is as how do it's not as too unique as people would say. It's when I was a child, or in my childhood, we all watched the movie by Ben Carson's story, and then I also watched it. I was quite intrigued. It's made me see how impactful being in the medical system or being a doctor could be. So, as anyone, and even in the African circle or in the African society, especially when you're a very bright student, the assumption is that you become a doctor. So, it wasn't too different in my case. So, I was a brilliant student that people expected, or people said it that, oh, do you want to become a medical doctor, or you want to become a medical doctor? I also entertained that particular idea, and I remember at a particular point in my life that I was really afraid of the sight of blood. And I spoke to my father about it. So, as I said, I come from a large family. I have six biological brothers. I also have my parents and my mom and my dad. They are very present in our lives. So, at a particular point in my life, I was scared. The sight of blood really did not appeal to me. I was disgusted by it, and I used to cringe a lot. So I spoke to my dad that I have an idea, or I have a dream to become a medical doctor, but this is the case where I do not like the sight of blood. It scares me. This was what my father told me. He told me that don't worry about it. When it's time for you to become a medical doctor, you wouldn't even have to think about it, or you wouldn't have to consider it. And true to his words, when it was time for me to choose my courses to become a medical doctor or to enroll in the medical program, it wasn't something I even considered, because at that particular time I had gotten over it. So it was just an idea, or it was just a desire that I had. I remember in senior high school, when we started senior high school level 100, or we call it SHS1. When I was in SHS1, I didn't really like biology because, I mean, when you're a medical doctor, biology is a big part of medicine. So I didn't like biology, so I preferred physics. I liked the mechanics and all. But getting to the end of high school, when I was in third year, I realized that biology was something that I found interesting. It was very nice for me. I loved the biological aspect of things, even though we were talking about plants, animals, and the human being. I was so intrigued by the human anatomy that I decided to pursue it more. So I think I had a very smooth transition from senior high school to the university in my medical career. I didn't really struggle. I think it was something that's perhaps, I mean, something that I was born for, or it's just by the providence of God, because it wasn't really a struggle for me. And as I said, at that particular point in time, I was sure this is what I wanted to do, and there was nothing which was holding me back, or there was no obstacle for me. So it was a very smooth transition for me into the medical field, or the medical space.
All right, that's interesting. So at one point you were sort of not very comfortable with biology. All right, maybe we can spend a few seconds there. If you think back now, okay, as a medical doctor now, you have overcome all of that, no? But
Yeah.
if you go to reconcile that thought, going back to your little you at the time, what do you think was the reason you were not maybe liking it, or you were not fond of it at the time?
I'm not too certain why. You see, when you are in the senior high school space, you have a lot of topics or a lot of courses to learn. You have about 8 of them to learn, and some of them too. And as a student, sometimes your preference for particular subjects also depends on how well your lecturer or your teacher teaches the topic, especially when you don't have, when you don't really know much about it and it's something that you are learning. So sometimes it depends on how the lecturer or the teacher introduces the particular course to you. It makes you intrigued to learn more, or based on how the lecturer introduces the topic, you are like, no, this is not for me, or you are not making it too exciting for me. But I would say for my case, I think in first year I had a very good physics teacher. So he made physics very attractive for me. So I really liked physics. However, biology wasn't something I hated, but in preference, in relation to physics was something that I really liked. So I even thought that perhaps I would pursue a career in engineering. But then when I learned to appreciate biology more, I realized that the human body is quite intriguing, and not just the human body, but the biology of things, science, how things come about, and how um living things where there are cycles and processes that come about. I was quite intrigued, and then I decided that I should go back to my childhood dream, which is medicine. There was no barrier for me, so I decided to continue to pursue medicine.
If we take a step back from there again, in your preschool years, was that something that you were particularly interested in, maybe wanting to study? Now you are not yet started, maybe your secondary school. You are still a very young adolescent. I'm trying to see what will occupy your mind in terms of, all of us have dreams. I'm interested in that dream. What were you having as a young adolescent there? Very young.
I was still trying to think about it, but as a young adolescent, I think it was just the medical dream. I wanted to become a medical doctor, and I also had a dream of helping others. I remember I used to dream about owning an orphanage to help people. It's not something that I really pursued, or something that I could think about or I could pursue, but then at a young age, that was what was occupying my mind, that I wanted to help people in the medical space. And then I also wanted to help people, especially orphans, because I would go outside and I'll see people on the streets and they were quite disheartening. So I had a dream that if I, grow up, I'm able to establish myself well. I also live for the betterment of others by also helping people, especially on the streets, to find their feet again, to go back to school, and then to find good food to eat and good shelter, good homes to live in. So those were some of my preoccupations as a young girl. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Benedicta. Now, take us through this school. How is it because not many people understand what is going on within the medical school now, in your preparation to become a doctor. How is it? What can you say about that?
Okay, so thank you so much for this particular question. And in the African setting or the Ghanaian setting, when you finish your schooling in the senior high school, you are given the liberty to choose or apply for schools, especially university. And for medical students per se, or the medical course, is quite difficult. That's one of the things that you get to realize as a student in the African setting, that it's quite difficult for you to get the medical course or the medical program, because it's very competitive. And I'm sure you even said it, that a lot of people would want to become medical doctors. It's now that the trajectory is changing, or people are getting more into tech, people are getting more into creative arts, people are realizing that engineering too can be good for them as well, but then it's still very competitive in our era or in our society. So it's absolutely important that you get very good grades for after your senior high school. So for us, or us in the West African setting, after senior high school, you take a particular exam called the West African Senior Certification Exam, the WASI. So when you take the WASI, you get your grades. You must make sure that you have very good grades. As I said, it's very competitive. So when you have your good grades, you apply to the various schools, medical schools in Ghana, in the university. So when you apply, and based on the particular school that you choose, you're allowed to go for an entrance exams which you take, and then afterwards, based on the regulations or the principles of the school, you also go for an interview as well. So when you're able to pass the exams and the interview, then you are given admission into the medical field or the medical school or medical program. So it's very competitive. So if you want to be a part of it or if you want to enroll, you have to do your absolute best as a student in the senior high school so that you ace your WAEC or your WASI exams after that, and then you apply to the various medical schools in Ghana.
Let's look at that school. You are already inside now. You are studying. You've gotten all your papers to be able to enroll into your medical school. Which part do you think is the most challenging for you that you remember? Any case study that you remember?
My biggest challenge was in the clinical years. So in Ghana, we go through the medical program for 6 years. So the first 3 are the preclinical. So those ones you study the main sciences and the theoretical part. So you study anatomy, physiology, you study biochemistry, you study microbiology, pharmacology, and the others. So afterwards, you go to your clinical years, which is the last 3 years of medical school, and then the clinical years. That's where you start interacting with patients, you start interacting with consultants who are doctors, and then they take you to the wards for you to interact with patients, for you to have a feel of the medical setting, so that after medical school is not like something new to you. So that's when you start practicing as a doctor. So that's what we call the clinical years or the clinical year. So that was my most challenging part. So the clinical system is such that, or the medical school is such that, in all honesty, medical school is not difficult. It's not difficult in the sense that the principles are quite simple. The anatomy, this is, let's say, the eye, or this is, let's say, an artery, this particular artery in the body, this is this particular vein in the body. It's as clear as you can see. The concepts are not too difficult or too complex to be understood. The only challenge is the bulk of the syllabus, that you have a lot to learn, you have a lot to cover. So that is the challenging part. So the challenging part, as I said, is the volume, the workload that you have to deal with as a student. So you definitely need help. And as I said, my challenging part was in clinical years, because aside the volume, you now have to go to the wards to meet with patients. You learn how to interact with patients as well. You learn how to interact with also your consultants as well, because they'll be right in front of you. They'll tell you to examine the patient, and as you're examining the patient, they see you and they correct you. It can be sometimes it can be challenging, especially if you're a person who is quite shy, or you're a person who is afraid of what we call confrontation, because sometimes not all the lecturers or not all the consultants are very kind. So sometimes you may have very difficult consultants who may not mind to tell you I know who may not mind to say things you may not appreciate to your face. So you will be in the group, you may examine you examine a patient, but then you realize that your examination is not good. Sometimes the way the lecturer will speak to you as well. So it teaches you how to be resilient as well. It teaches you how to, work with patients and work with your colleagues as well. So my challenging part was clinical years. And at that particular point, I had to rely on friends as well, because when you start your medical schooling, you realize that it's not easy to do it alone because it's challenging. You have a lot of things to do, and then you need people because aside the patient, you have to examine to become very, very good at it. And it's not all the time that you're able to go to the hospital or you're able to go to the patients. So with your mates, your colleagues, we used to examine patients, or sorry, we used to examine or practice our examinations amongst ourselves. So one of our students or one of our colleagues will act as a patient, and then we will act as, let's say, a student or a doctor, and then we will examine. So I learned the value of, teamwork and collaborations. That it's never easy for you to do a medical school alone. It's never easy for you to excel on your own. You may do well, but then for you to do very well and excel in your career, excel in the medical system, you definitely need people to rely on. So that is one of the things that I learned in medical school that has shaped me.
Now, you were talking about the human anatomy before. Could you help us understand what that means? Okay, we are not all medical doctors, so we don't understand the jargon that might be there. Could you break it down for us?
Oh, the human anatomy is simply the parts of the human being, or what makes up the human being, or what makes up the human body, like your eyes, your nose, your hand, the vessels. It talks about the structures that come together to form your human body. Let's say your nose, your eyes, all of it, your heart, your brain. So that's when we say we are learning or we are studying anatomy, that's basically it, that we are talking about the structures of the human body. And as I said, the human body is quite big, extensive. There are lots of bones, about 206 bones. There are lots of arteries, different arteries. When you take your hand, just your arm, there are lots of veins and lots of arteries. There are nerves as well, so you have to study all of them. And then so that's basically what anatomy is. And when we talk about something like physiology talks about the functioning of your human body. So aside you having all your eyes and everything about your face intact, there's also what we call the functioning, the physiology, how these things come together to function so that you're able to speak, you're able to eat, you're able to perform life's functions. So those are just aspects, very basic aspects of medicine that every medical student is required to learn in the practice.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we're beginning to get more curious now. You call it basics, but there is a lot that is really going there. Also, because you made mention of, I think about 206 bones you said that are in the human body. Then for the arteries, all the different things that are making the blood to pump into the body. Then we haven't even talked about the brain, the eyes. I think each of them is like a little mini universe of their own. So how are we able to understand all this one? Okay, I'm not talking of me. I'm not a medical doctor. I mean, how are you able to understand all these different dynamics of the human machine to understand how it works so that when something is wrong, you know exactly which part of the human body something is wrong with so that you get a medicine that is going to correct that. Can you explain that part?
So that is that is what medical school teaches you. So that's why we spend quite a lot of time in medical school, because as I said, the body is extensive, and it's not just that. It's not just about learning the anatomy and then the physiology. There's also a particular topic or a particular course we learn called pathology. So that one talks about the function of the body, the illness, or how the body is ill or gets ill in the basic layman's terms. So that's also part of the things that we learn. So for you to understand what is really wrong with the body, you don't just have to know what makes up the body. You don't just have to know how the body functions. You also have to know the disease process, how the diseases happen, they occur, and what damages it does or has on the body. You also have to learn pharmacology. So the pharmacology talks about how we are able to give medication, so that once we know what is wrong with the body, we give you the medications, or we give you the right treatments or medications to be able to cure or treat your illness. So it's a whole lot that goes on. So it's basically what you are taught in school. So for me to know that this particular thing is wrong in your body is not just knowing it, I have to interact with you. So that's what clinical years also teach you. So we do what we call history taking. So I take a history of you. So that's why you go to the consulting room or you go to a doctor and then he will ask you a lot of questions because he wants to know exactly what is wrong with you. And not just that, if something is wrong with you, he wants to know the complications, how far or how bad what is wrong with you has gone, and if there are any as I said, complications that he'll get to know. And then he would get to know what's good or medications that you would benefit from. So it's a whole I don't think I'll be able to tell you what to do, but as I said, it's it's within all that we learn. So anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology, and as even with that, we have to specialize or subdivide into. Now we want to do what we call pediatrics, because when you come to the body or the anatomy of the child, it's not the child is not a small adult, right? The child has very unique things about him or her which may be slightly different from the adults. So that's why we'll have a different doctor who is treating a child, and then we'll have a different doctor who may be having a general practice. We also have, let's say, a doctor treating a pregnant woman. So when we go to obstetrics, a doctor treating a female. So based on what you specialize in, you are able to also treat or you're able to diagnose people or your patients or your clients based on what is wrong with them. But as a medical doctor or a medical student, you learn all these things, but then not into so much detail. So after these basic things, you then decide whether I want to become an obstetrician, gynecologist, or I want to become, let's say, a pediatrician, or I want to become a public health consultant, or I want to become this. So it's a whole lot. Yes.
Absolutely. We can see that. We can see that from you. That really is a whole lot of, it's a universe of its own.
It
A
is.
lot of different little pieces of. All right. Now, you were talking of relating with the people, because now you need to ask a lot of questions to the patient to understand what is wrong and all of that. There's a lot of dialogue, communication, conversation going on there. And that sort of lead me to wonder, how is the patient able to explain in terms so that you can sort of be in a complete agreement? Okay, maybe that is not how I want to put the question. How I want to put the question is that in the moment of loading the information into the human brain, do we need to understand it from also the environment where you live in, so that you can get the terms that you are using to explain that, okay, I'm having a headache, but what if I don't go to school? Am I able to explain that? Are there terms for us to be able to understand these medical terms that can help us understand what is happening in our body, like the eyes, the different part of it, like the bone, because bones are not just bone. Bones are different dimension, have different name, have different function, have different weight. Are we able to dissect it like this, maybe in the local dialect, to sort of understand that, so that when somebody is having a problem, he's able to explain to you where the pain is coming from, what kind of pain, is he doing, is he doing, is he doing, is it? So I'm trying to understand how we are able to come to terms with all these different dynamics of what is not working, so that you can understand and then help the person to fix it.
Okay, that's a very good question. I really like it because when we started clinical years, we were made to understand that we were in a local setting. So even friends of ours, colleagues of ours who didn't understand the local language had to learn the local language. As a university, there were Nigerian students, there were students from Uganda, there were students from Cameroon who obviously did not speak Chi. So when we started clinical years, they were made to learn the Chi. So we had a book, a Chi book, which was like a dictionary, so that at least when the patient comes and then makes, you wouldn't, as you said, not all the patients are local, not all the patients are literate, are able to speak English. So some of them will come and then speak to you in the local dialect. And recently I had an interview on radio, and then I realized how it is. I mean, very important for you to be able to speak the local dialect very well. So even aside your medical practice in the consulting room, sometimes you may be allowed or you may be called on to go and speak in, let's say, in a particular church in the local marketplace where all the understand is the local dialect. You wouldn't have the liberty of speaking the English, even though you are taught in English. There's also the demand for you to learn the local setting, learn the local language, and understand things from the local setting. So let's say a patient will come to you, and then based on the complaints that the patient come, will not say that maybe my head is aching me in English, will come to you in Chi, and then in even the Chi, it's quite confusing because some of them will say, just as you were saying, which was quite funny, that someone say my head is cuckoo cuckoo. And in Chi, someone will say my miyefun samfnomi. It's something that even you who speak the local dialect, you don't even understand. Someone will say it's very low or it's very outdated Chi. So the challenge is there that sometimes you may not understand them, but based on your interactions with them, so you ask a couple of questions, and based on your experience too, you may be able to identify what the person is talking about or person is getting to know. But it's also quite good that aside your clinical skills as a medical doctor, you don't just rely on your clinical skills, you also have investigations that you can do. So when the patient comes to you, you interact with the patient through dialogue, you get to know what the patient is saying. So let me get you through the basics, how we end up diagnosing and then treating our patients. When the patient comes to you, even the physique of the patient, the appearance of the patient tells you something. So let's say a patient comes to you obviously covered up, covered up with a lot of clothes, quite shivering. So it gives you an idea. Perhaps this person is very cold, perhaps this person has chills and all of that. It gives you an idea. The person comes with a particular sort of dressing in the psychiatry field. The way the person dresses gives you an idea. Is this person right or well in the mind, or is this particular person not well? So it goes beyond just sitting down and then talking to the patient. You look at the appearance of the patient as well. Where they are coming from, the kind of work they do, all gives you an idea or points to a particular diagnosis that you may later make. Because let's say some particular diseases are quite common in a particular occupational setting. So if the particular person who comes to you is, complaining or giving you signs of this particular disease, you know where your diagnosis should go to. So when the patient comes to you, you look at the physique, you talk to the patient, you have a dialogue. So that's what we call the history taking. So you take a history of the patient, a medical history of the patient, getting to know what the person will say. Oh, my head is aching, or my arm is hurting me, or I had an accident, or water poured, or warm or hot water poured on this particular part of my body. After talking to the patient, you do what we call the examination, your clinical examination. So you don't just talk to the patient, but then you examine the patient. So based on your history taken or talking to the patient, you realize that, oh, it's this particular arm that is hurting, or this particular part of the body that's hurting. So you examine based on your suspicion with instruments. You may take your stethoscope to check the heart. You may take your sphag. You may take other tools that you may need. There's patella hammer, there are a lot of them. So based on your suspicion, you examine the patient. And when you examine the patient, at that particular point, you may have an idea that, oh, this is what I am dealing with. This person is suffering from a trauma. This particular person is likely to be suffering from malaria. This particular person is likely to be suffering from, let's say, arthritis, or this particular condition. And when you think, there are some diseases that you don't need to do any lab test, you don't need to do any x-rays, you don't need to do any further investigations, but then there are other diseases that you may need them to help you diagnose or help you know whether the disease has complicated, has led to other complications, or has become worse. So that's what you do. So you start with history, you do examination afterwards. The examination, you may have your diagnosis that you may then prescribe treatment, or after the examination you think you want to know much further, so you do your examinations, so you do your investigations, whether it's a lab test, whether it's a scan, an x-ray, or whatever you want to prescribe for the patients, and then you prescribe treatment. So the treatment, which may be a drug, or which may be a procedure that you want to do, a surgery, an operation, or it could be just a medical advice that the patients may need to become better or to prevent the further progression of that particular disease or ailment.
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
That is really whole. that is really a big explanation. That is a full lecture. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, now I wanted to speak about something. That thing that get the patient to come to you, the disease. That if the patient is well, it will not come to meet the doctor. Okay, so as a medical doctor, how do you really describe disease? What is disease?
Disease is when I will make it as basic as possible. So when we say someone is in good health, right? When you are in good health, we say that when you are in a state of social, you're in a state of emotional, physical well-being. So when you have good social well-being, when you have good physical well-being, when you have emotional well-being, we say you are in good health. So if the opposite of that can be as a result of a disease, so when there's a dysfunction of any part of your body, then we are looking at disease. So disease can be it can affect your physical body, your physical body, your anatomy. Let's say your hand, you may get hurt. Your heart, the functioning of your heart, it can affect the functioning of your kidneys. It can affect the functioning of any part of your body. So any part of your body may be defunctioned, or it may lose its function. Aside the physical aspect of your body, you may have when you have, let's say, an emotional defunctioning. Let's say your thinking is not right, the way you are able to articulate or speak, we are looking at your mental well-being as well. So it's not just about your physical health, your mental well-being is also included. So your mental well-being, as I said, is also included. So when you have a defunctioning, when there's a this functioning of your mental or your physical well-being, then we are looking at disease.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I think I want us to revisit what you were explaining before about the human anatomy. For the fact that, okay, here, I just love to talk to people. I love to learn. I love to interview people. And I've interviewed more than 1,000 people in this podcast. So I remember, for example, I was interviewing a medical doctor. He's now retired. He's coming from Benin Republic, but he was working here in Italy. He's retired. So we were talking about medicine, and this was during the period of Ebola. We're talking about disease, and he was telling me the different way that we look at the human body from the point of view of an African, and from the point of view of modern medicine. Okay, so we call it Western medicine. It's not actually only Western medicine, it's modern medicine in the sense that it's something of the modern time. Because you are a medical doctor, you are a Ghana, you don't need to be a European to practice this medicine. Therefore, it is modern medicine. So he was telling me a concept that I want you to respond to. They call it, again, compartmenting of the human body. In that, in Africa, he was saying that a body can be defecting. Maybe, for example, a hand, your hand can be manifesting something, but that is not where the problem might be. The problem might be something completely different. And so that if you heal only the hand without healing the source of the problem, you might end up manifesting again on your head, because the problem is still there. In the sense that based on modern medicine, he will call it, or maybe Western medicine, I don't know if it's correct, that when you isolate a part of the body and treat only that part of the body, that is what he was saying, that it would be a better approach if we treat the entire human being. Because if we don't treat the entire human being, then that problem might just go out in another area, and the person will still sick because the person is not healed. So that if we go into holistic healing now, for example, we see people talking about not just healing your face, healing your legs, but healing the entire you. But this is neither here nor there too. I think we need more explanation in this. What do you recommend, or what is your what do you think about this idea of the compartment? In Italian, it's very easy for me, compartimento, that is the division, mechanical human being, where the human being is treated like a machine. Like you have the bolt, the nut, the screw, everything is separate. Whereas he was saying that you cannot treat everything separate. Everything is complete. Everything is together. You need to treat the whole of the human being. And of course, he's a medical doctor, a very good one, and he has retired. So I wanted to see, what is your thought on that?
Okay, so thank you so much. I think I'm not familiar with the compartmental healing, but I'm quite familiar with the holistic approach, or the holistic approach to medicine, in that as you take the human body, it's not the human body is not in isolation, or you as a person, you are not in isolation. So let's say if you take a human being or a person, the person may be going to school, the person may be a wife, the person may be someone's mentor, the person may be a businessman. So you don't just take one part of the human being and then use it to generalize. Or let's say if one part of the person, or a particular part of the person, is not functioning well, is likely to affect the individual. Let's say if you are having challenges at work, as basic, if you're having challenges at work, your boss is giving you a tough time, and finance is not going on well, it's likely to affect the way you relate with your family, your wife, or your children. In the same sense, and when you come to the human body is a whole system. So it's not just one person. So it's very unlikely that you treat individuals in isolation. Moreover, I initially said that the human body is a system. So your human body works in a system such that one particular part of your body, is connected to the other. Is my brain functioning in my brain, an area in my brain that is controlling my speech. A functioning in my brain that is controlling my understanding of speech. When you speak to me, I'm able to understand you because there's a part of my body, or there's a part of my brain that is helping me understand you, and also there's a part of my brain that is also helping me to speak with you. If I'm raising my hand, there's a particular part of my body that is aiding me to raise my hand. So it's not just my hand. If my hand is not functioning, is it just my hand, or is it the part controlling my hand? Is it the part supplying my hand with the nutrients it needs to function well, or is it the part that is just controlling my hand? So the whole human body is not, your hand is not in isolation. Your heart has to beat for blood to get to your hand, so that your blood, your hands will be nourished with enough nutrients, enough oxygen, so that you'll be able to use your hand. Your brain has to function well so that it can help your hand function. So it is not, when you are treating a human body, you don't treat the person in isolation. So that is why we have something called complications. And I initially told you, or initially mentioned, that when we are investigating disease, and when you come, let's say you have a headache, you have something wrong with your body, we are not just looking at just what is causing the headache. Aside, something like a common one would be hypertension. So when an individual comes to you with hypertension, for instance, has a lot of complications, meaning that when you have a hypertension, the hypertensive patient is likely to be suffering from a kidney problem, is likely to be suffering from a heart problem, is likely to be suffering from its hypertension can lead many times to stroke. So when you come and then the person who has hypertension sits before you, you are not just looking at the hypertension, you are looking at what the hypertension has likely caused. So you are looking at the body in a whole system. The first one, what is causing this particular illness, what's causing the hypertension, and has this particular illness, this hypertension, led to the damage of other parts of the body? If the particular patient you are looking at is suffering from malaria has other complications. The malaria can lead to anemia. When you have malaria, it's not just you are weak or you're having a fever, it can lead to the breakdown of your blood cells, so it can lead to anemia. So I'm looking at, is this particular person also suffering from anemia as well? So you look at the body in its entirety, and even aside the physical, that this illness is causing this damage to the human body, you can also look at it in the public health setting, which is called the social determinants of disease. So poverty, for instance, can lead or can influence disease. Let's say you are treating a particular patient. You mentioned the holistic. I'm explaining that you are talking to this particular patient who has this particular illness. You want to treat this illness, but you realize that the house the patient lives in is also a contributing factor to the illness, because you give the particular medications to the patients, but the patients will go home and will eat the same food you are advising him or her against, because the particular patient doesn't have money. So it is true that you don't look at the individual or the patient before you in an isolation, because determinants of diseases vary. A lot of things causes diseases, and not just that, the disease itself also leads to a lot of things. So many things cause the disease. You have to look at all these factors or all these determinants which may lead to disease, because you may decide to treat the disease, but if what is causing the disease, as I mentioned, that this particular person doesn't have food in this setting, or you are treating malaria but the person is not in a mosquito net, or the person lives in a mosquito prevalent area, or a place where there's a lot of mosquito, if you do not solve that or let the person know that you have to be in a mosquito net, you have to clear your bushes around, you have to use insecticide, you give the particular patient anti-malarial, but the patient will come again. So that is one factor. And then the other factor that I explained is, aside you treating the malaria, you also have to look at what the malaria has led to. So it is true that you may have a hand problem, but the problem may not necessarily be the hand. And then the typical example is a stroke patient. So stroke happens when you have a particular part of your brain not receiving enough oxygen. So if it's not receiving enough oxygen, that particular part of the brain dies. And if that particular part of the brain dies, the part of the body that the brain controls is unable to function anymore. So if, let's say, a part of your body or if a part of your brain has the stroke I'm talking about, that particular part of your brain was controlling your hand movement, your leg movement. If you have the stroke, it's not necessarily that your hand is bad, the anatomy of your hand is bad, but it is the control, what is controlling your hand, that is not doing well or that has died. So that one can be easily explained with a stroke. So as I said, it's quite true, and I agree with you that when we are looking at the patient, we look at the patient in a holistic way, and then look at the patient as as what has caused or the consequences of the particular disease that we are talking about.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. You're very vast on this topic. Now, let's spend some seconds on what is actually your area in medicine. What are you doing in medicine?
Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm currently doing housemanship. Housemanship is after medical school in the Ghanaian educational system or the Ghanaian medical system. As a houseman, after medical school, you do something called house for 2 years, where you work as a junior medical doctor. So after housemanship, you then decide to go into residency program based on the specialty of your choice. So that's what I'm doing. I'm currently doing my housemanship. So I have not chosen my current, I've not chosen residency yet, or I've not specialized yet. So I do general medicine at the moment.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. So at least people know where to how to categorize you now. Thank you for that. Then you also talk of ROTC Foundation. Could you talk more about that? Because that is part of what you're doing, that you are really passionate about that.
Right. It's so the RTC started when we were in medical school. In medical school, my colleagues and I, we were bereaved in school. 3 of our colleagues passed on in medical school. They started with us, but they couldn't finish or end with us. So we lost 3 colleagues of ours. So during our final year, our class president decided or brought a vision that we should have a foundation in honor of them, and to also help our society as well. If we weren't able to help our colleagues, we can also offer help to some of our people in our society as well who may need help. So we decided to create or establish this particular foundation in their honor and to help people in the society as well. So it came from our pain and our decision to use it to help people in our society.
All right. Help people in the society. In what way do you use this ROTC Foundation to help? What exactly are you doing in it?
Right. So our main aim or our main mission is to alleviate the burden caused by cancer, road traffic accident, and neurological disease, judging from how we lost these 3, and we intend to alleviate the burdens caused by these notable conditions through public health education, through research, and through social impact projects. So our first one, we educate people on health. So when it's time for sometimes we participate in health campaigns like breast cancer awareness or basically health education. We realize that even in our Ghanaian setting, there's a lot of miscommunication in health, misinformation in health. So with our expertise and our experience, we educate people on health topics, crucial health topics, to help people be well informed on health. And then the second one is to build research capacity amongst medical students and then we clinicians as well. This is something that we are still working actively on. We've not done a major project or a major research project yet. And then the second one is social impact project. So the social impact project, based on a need, we decide to participate in a particular project to help people or help a particular health setting. So recently we had a blood donation exercise where our target was 100 pints of blood or 100 units of blood, and then through the efforts of so many people who came on board to help us, we exceeded our target. So we ended up donating 102 units of whole blood to the Confano Teaching Hospital, the blood bank or the transfusion medicine unit over there. So that's basically what we do at RTC Foundation.
Thank you so much for that. We appreciate the good work that you are doing. And of course, we also ask the people that are listening to us, if you have a good heart to help this foundation, please reach out to Benedita. You can see what they are doing to help other people that are in need. So yeah, you can reach out to her because one hand needs the other to be able to do something good in this world. All right, now, having said that, as a medical doctor, as somebody who wants to dedicate her life to this service, you must have seen a problem in the society that you are trying to solve or trying to make a contribution in. All right, now you have also created an organization, okay, with other people, you have created the RTC organization because of the same issue. Okay, the issue. How do you explain or what do you see about the Ghanaian health situation, judging it from what you see today? Of course, you have been there, and I'm sure you are going to be there for a long time.
Right. So the Ghanaian health system, like many other African settings, is we have quite a number of challenges, and I think the very first and obvious one will be our finances. So looking at the patient, so we may look at the health system structure or the health system structure, and then we may look at the patient. So judging from the patient, we realize that a lot of patients, major conditions that we see is as a result of poor finances. I am not coming to the hospital because I don't have enough money to buy drugs. And even if I do have money to buy drugs, I don't want my money to be depleted. So many times, those we see in the hospital are people who come with very, very advanced illness, meaning that they have neglected whatever is wrong with them for a long time. And so when it becomes too unbearable for them, that's when they come to the hospital. And many times it's because it's at advanced stage, there is very little you can do for them. And some of them, the conditions to need regular follow-ups. So a lot of them are unable to do the follow-ups. They come and then they give up. And when it becomes advanced or unbearable, that's when you see them in the hospital. So that's it with the patient. So you can also talk about the fact that our services, some of the patients who live in areas where they don't have access to a lot of facilities in their hospitals, so they go to the primary care centers. So we have the primary care centers, we have the district ones, and then we have the regional ones. So for the primary care centers, the CHIPS compounds, a lot of them do not have the facilities that you would need or the regular facilities that would help our patients. Those there are very basic. So patients do not get as much as they would need for their health. So people would have to travel far and wide far distances to get the treatments that they would they require, and that can be very discouraging for some of them. So they would rather stay where they are, or they would rather resort to herbal medications which they think may help them even before they decide to eventually come to the hospital. So finance and then the poor facilities that we have are some of the major challenges that we have in our medical setting in Ghana.
Thank you for that. All right, I'm going to ask you this one. We're moving towards the end of the conversation. Okay, I know that you are not in that position, but let's imagine for a moment you are the Minister of Health in Ghana and you do have a magic power and you have three things to do to revolutionize the Ghanaian medical sector. What are these three things you will do?
This is very interesting. All right. So three, you mentioned three.
Yeah.
So three. So I would the first one would be to build more hospitals. I'll build a lot of hospitals. So in Ghana, we have very good hospitals and we have teaching hospitals. The tertiary facilities where there are a lot of facilities, you get all the labs done, you get all the investigations done, you have all the specialists around. We have very little. So we can count Konfanotri Teaching Hospital, CAT, you can count Kolebu, you can count UMGC, you can count Tamale Teaching Hospital, Cape Coast Teaching Hospital. These are good, but it would be much better if we have at least one of these big hospitals in all the regions in our in our country, about the 16 regions in our country. If we have very high modern hospitals, high ultra modern hospitals with all the specialists and all the facilities you will need in every region, that would be great, because people travel across regions to seek healthcare, especially in the tertiary hospitals, because as I said, those are the ones which have the specialists and they have the ultra modern facilities over there. So I would make sure to build more hospitals, more regional hospitals, more district hospitals, and improve on the primary health primary level, so the CHIPS compounds to improve them as well. And then the second one will be with the proper implementation of the national health insurance. So we have national health insurance where people come to the hospitals and some of the medications are highly subsidized, some of the procedures are highly subsidized, some of the facilities or some of the medications people do not need to buy, but it is not as intensive, it's not as effective. The implementation is not as effective, meaning that a lot of people have not subscribed to the national health insurance, and not just that, those who have subscribed to or being subscribed to, they don't receive so much subsidies. So you may have the national health insurance card or you may be on national health insurance, but you still have a higher hospital bill because not all the medications or the procedures are subsidized for you to have, the reduced cost for healthcare. So I've mentioned two, and then the last one will be to give the healthcare personnel incentives and then the remunerations that they deserve, because it's now very common knowledge that a lot of doctors in Ghana are running out of the country. Running is a strong word. However, a lot of people are going to abroad in search of better remunerations for their services because they see what we are giving here as too little and the economic certain or the economic hardships of the country. So to increase the incentives or to give doctors better remunerations for their services, not just doctors, but nurses as well, because a lot of nurses are leaving the country and then it's becoming very alarming because you'll be in the hospital working with a particular, personnel, you go for leave and then you come back and you realize that the number of people you are working with have drastically decreased because a lot of them have gone outside the country. So that is one of the challenges we are having in our country or having in our health system as well, that a lot of people or a lot of health personnel are leaving the country because they feel they are not remunerated enough for their services.
Thank you so much, Dr. Benedicta. All these are important points, and I believe that somebody is listening. And of course, they should listen because we are talking about the health of the people. So those in the position of authority should listen to see what they can do to make it better. If people like you have decided to dedicate their life to the service of the health of their citizens, those in the position of authority should make sure that your choice is respected and make it easy for you to be able to help your country. So I really thank you so much for that. Now, people want to connect with you and tell them how they can reach out to you. Why not? They might also want to support also your project, the RTC Foundation. And what would be your final thought to conclude this conversation? Let's go.
You can reach out to me on any of the social media platforms. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on Facebook as well, on Instagram and YouTube. For YouTube, RTC Foundation is there. We have videos there that talk about our story. So you can you can listen and watch some of the videos to get to know our story better, get to know us better. And yes, so you can also connect with me. My name is Dr. Benedicta Hayford. That's my name on all the social media platforms. So you can connect with me as well. And my last words will be that I'm still growing in my medical journey. I'm still growing in my medical field. In my medical field, as I said, but one thing that I am learning is the power of vision. That if you have a particular vision that you want to run with in the health field, in your career, if you sell it well or if you talk about your vision quite well and let people know what you're doing. Today we're talking about stories, right? So if you're able to share your story well, help people understand your story and appreciate your story, it will be very easy for you to help people to understand you better. I remember when we started the RTC Foundation, it was very difficult for others or people to accept because of the sensitivity of the issue. So we had to do a lot of speaking with our colleagues. We had to do a lot of speaking with the relatives that this is what we envisioned, that we wanted to help people in as much as we are, we are bereaved. We wanted to use this as an opportunity to also help others and help our people in our nation and then our society. It took a while. It took quite a lot of time and then a lot of negotiation. But in the end, they gave us a platform, or they accepted us that we could have this particular opportunity, and now we're doing great things. So if you have a vision, especially some of us in the African setting, it's very difficult to let things happen. It's very difficult to do things. It's very difficult to pave your own way. So a lot of people are running, or a lot of people are leaving to the diaspora, and there's nothing wrong with it. But if you want to stay, if you want to do great things in the health system, in wherever you are living or wherever you are at, once you have the vision, learn to communicate your vision well and do your best with your vision, especially in advocacy. Once you do that, initially it may be difficult, but then as you go ahead, or as you push and then do well with your vision, it will only be a matter of time before you get people to fully support what you are doing and decide to help you and run along with your vision as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Benedicta. We appreciate you. We appreciate the good work that you are doing there. And we hope, we wish, and we really stand behind you that you will be successful in your vision and in your mission. It's very, very important what you said there, that we should have a vision of where we want to go, and it shouldn't stop there. We should also hold on to that vision like a flag. You are going to be running with it, that you know where you are going, and then people are going to join you because they see that you are going somewhere. If you are not going anywhere, don't complain that nobody is following you because you are going nowhere. So it is important that you are going somewhere with a flag saying, that is where I'm going. This is my story. I have a dream and I'm pursuing it. Every other person that believes in you will follow you. You don't need the whole world. You just need some people to believe in what you're doing. That is enough for you to change the world. They say that the world can be changed by those who are crazy enough to believe that they can change it. And that is how it happened, with a vision, with a dream. Thank you so much. I really
Thank you
appreciate you.
so much. I appreciate you as well. It's been a pleasure.